Lords, the British Museum operates independently of government, meaning decisions relating to the care and management of its collections, including these tablets, are a matter for its trustees. The museum has said that it recognises the significance of the tablets and has held meaningful talks with the Ethiopian Church on this issue. The museum's stated ambition is to seek to lend these objects to an Ethiopian Orthodox Church in the UK. The government fully supports the trustees. We've had no recent discussions with the government of Ethiopia on this matter. We're gravely concerned by the current conflict in Ethiopia and have called for all sides to begin peace talks and to facilitate humanitarian access.
My Lords, I thank the Minister for his guarded reply. The issue for me is respecting another nation's culture and religious values. And in the light of the fact that the tablets entered the collection of the British Museum after British troops led by Lord Napier in 1868 looted them following the Battle of Magbala, would he not agree that Her Majesty's government bears some basic moral responsibility? And as that surely is the case, will the government give some words of encouragement, and I believe you've implied something, to the trustees of the British Museum to do the right thing and return the tablets to Ethiopia?
My Lords, the Noble and Most Reverend Lord alludes to the complexity of this case and the 150-year-old matter it concerns. The expedition to which he refers was, of course, to free hostages who had been taken, including an Anglican missionary whose two servants had been beaten to death by Emperor Tewodos II. But the main issue is the way that these items are now cared for by the British Museum, and the Noble and Most Reverend Lord is absolutely right to point to their religious significance. The tablets are housed in a special location which is maintained in consultation with the Ethiopian Church. They're well looked after by a committed curatorial and conservation team, and only available to be visited by Ethiopian Orthodox priests. But as I say, the museum has constructive conversations with the Ethiopian Church on this and would welcome further discussions.
My Lords, apart from the way in which these artefacts were obtained and the responsibility of the British Museum and its independence, I wonder whether the Noble Lord the Minister would agree that what sets these artefacts apart, as he's intimated, from many others in the British Museum and other museums across our land, is that they are sacred, and as such they relate to a living faith, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Whereas these tablets mean very little to anyone here except as stones of limited historical value, and no one's able to see them anyway, they're of profound religious significance in Ethiopia. Would the Minister not agree that they should therefore be returned to those who understand them to be holy and will cherish them as such?
Well, the Right Reverend Prelate is right. These items remain of enduring importance to people. The British Museum is very sensitively discussing those matters with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, so that those sensitivities can be understood and reflected, and so that the future of the items can be discussed appropriately. The past may be distant, but it remains around us, and the issues of sensitivity and importance, of course, are considered very carefully by the British Museum and all other cultural institutions.
My Lords, as a former trustee of the British Museum, may I ask my noble friend the Minister if he agrees with me that more generally museums do have a responsibility to be clear about the provenance of contested objects, and that the British Museum's website provides a model of openness and transparency for museums globally on how to deal with and explain the provenance of such objects.
Well done, I completely agree with my noble friend, and I'm grateful to him for alluding to the British Museum's work in this area. The pages on their website, which explain both these items and more generally the museum's approach to issues of restitution and contested heritage are a model of transparency. They set out very clearly the facts so that people can understand the past, they can make their own decisions, but also so that they can understand the claims for restitution which have been made to the museum and how the museum is dealing with them.
My Lords, whilst I appreciate there is some legal complexity surrounding the return of the sacred tablets to Ethiopia, these highly significant religious artefacts have resided unseen in the British Museum stores for the best part of 150 years. And as I understand it, not even students, researchers and historians are able to view them. My Lords, this can't be right. So can the Noble Lord the Minister give some comfort to Ethiopia by encouraging the trustees of the British Museum to find a solution which satisfies curatorial concerns and the understandable desire from Ethiopia to return them to their rightful home?
The Noble Lord touches on one of the core sensitivity of the matter. Some of these items are considered so sacred and holy they can only be looked at by Ethiopian Orthodox priests, and that would be the case in Ethiopia as it would be in London. That's why the British Museum is in discussion with the Church. But there are other items from Magdala which can be found in the museum's public galleries or changing displays, and together and individually they demonstrate some of the great artistic traditions of Ethiopia, showing the breadth and explaining the diversity of the religious traditions in that country, including Christianity, Islam, Judaism and many other faiths.
My Lords.
My Lords, recognising that...
My Lords, we have time. It's the turn of the Liberal Democrats, then it's the Labour benches, and if you could work out which one of you is going to stand up.
Thank you. My Lords, recognising that only a handful of priests of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church living in the UK, not even the director of the British Museum, can view them, and that there is in this case no legal impediment, would it not help the trustees of the British Museum come to the right decision if the government indicated its support for the return of the tablets to Ethiopia, and if he agrees, will he instruct the trustees of that view?
My Lords, the museums are independent of the government. It's up to the trustees. The government supports the trustees in their earnest work in the discussions they're having on these sensitive issues with the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and others on it.
My Lords, these items, which are of huge religious significance, were looted. They were stolen after a brutal, punitive expedition. That is the reality. And given that reality, given the fact that they are not able actually to be seen or venerated or studied by anybody, wouldn't it be the right thing to do, the moral thing to do? Wouldn't it enhance the moral position of the trustees and the British government in their discussions with the Ethiopian government about human rights if they were to be returned, and returned without delay?
My Lords, the items have a complicated provenance. They were indeed taken by British troops after the expedition. But some of the items in the collection were themselves stolen by Tewodros II to assemble the collection in the first place. Some of the items have been given back, including by Her Majesty the Queen in 1965 to Emperor Haile Selassie. The British Museum is looking at the complexity of this issue, talking sensitively to the Ethiopian Church and others to decide the best way of caring for them and reflecting that complex past.
My Lords, goodness. My Lords, I declare an interest as a trustee of the Museum of the Home. Museums across Ukraine are desperately trying to save internationally important works of art from being looted by invading Russian forces. Can the Noble Lord the Minister tell the House what the government's doing to help them?
Well, my Lords, I had the pleasure of addressing the All-Party Parliamentary Group for the UN yesterday, where there was a special parliamentary briefing from UNESCO on this important matter. The government is providing initial funding through the Prince Claus Fund to help with the preservation of cultural objects in Ukraine.
My Lords, can I say to my noble friend that I fully understand his difficulties with this matter. It's a complex matter, as it is with many countries and these arguments about artifacts. But can I ask him whether he has ever had any discussions with his Danish opposite number about the large amount of Anglo-Saxon silver that is held by Danish institutions more than held by English institutions, and what is the prospect of having these artifacts returned to this country?
Grateful to my noble friend. I've had no such discussions with my Danish counterpart, but my noble friend's question does allude to the complexities of these issues. There are sensitivities which remain very present, and which museums and cultural organisations do such important work in helping us to understand in their fullness, but we must always come to terms with the past and draw our own conclusions.
Fourth oral question.